Coach, I asked JDB the same question, but what are you most happy with at this point in the spring as you guys, kind of come down the finish line here with your defense?
One of our biggest goals that I said early on was consistency. And aside from one practice, I think we've been fairly consistent. Guys growing. When you have so many new faces, you just want to see improvement every single day. Not to say that we don't want to be ready at the end of spring, but we really just want to see the steady improvement. We're ready by game one. And so I'm really happy with the commitment they've shown to work and get better. And, that comes a lot with extra time in the film room, comes a lot with asking your coaches questions at night and things like that. Our guys reach out a lot to us, and just really impressed with their work ethic.
What are some improvements you want to see going into the spring game?
As a defensive guy, you always think you can tackle better. I think we have get tackled better steadily, like I said about some other things, every scrimmage. I'd like to see that culminate in this last scrimmage in the spring game, and just see us line up and play with effort. We've played with effort in every scrimmage, and I'd like to see us hopefully go out there and give our fans a good show and play with great effort again.
Defensively, are you seeing any players in particular emerge as kind of like vocal leaders? Is it too early for that, and do you try and encourage that as a D coordinator?
You look at, there's probably a guy in every room. I see Picard in the D-line room. He does a really good job with that. Him and Zion, and then Day and Sam, and even DJ Johnson in that linebacker room do a great job. And then D-Money and Jamarley back there in the back end. Obviously, you always have Tegan Wilkes that's played a lot of ball, right? So down the middle of our defense is where I see a lot of our leadership, and that's usually what you want, So there's a bunch of young guys, too, that, are starting to come out of their shell. I saw Keith Crowell flash today. I was really proud of him. And just need to continue to develop leadership just like we're developing talent.
I was going to ask, seemed like the corners contested a lot of balls today, and then these receivers are really good. So do you like kind of their progression too?
Yeah, they come ready to work every single day. Just like I was talking about a second ago. Those guys know every single day they're ready to be on their A game. Not only the offense we run, but how talented those guys are. So I'm really happy with how they competed today in the short practice.
With your defense, how much do you install in the spring? Not to go too deep into the specifics, but and how much were you trying to add throughout the summer going into the season?
I think there's things that you're going to do, and I think you always want to make sure you install those for a couple reasons. One, so you can practice it, obviously get better at it. Two, so you can evaluate, do these players fit more of, like 3 calls that you might run a lot, A, B, and C. You might realize, well, we're actually better at call A and call C. Call B may be more of a change-up this year or things like that. So I'd say, of base downs, I'd probably say we put in probably 60 to 70% of what we're doing. I don't think you get too deep into third down packages, and we do red zone in the spring, and not much goal line, but, base downs, you're probably talking about 60, 70% probably.
It all starts up front on both sides of the ball, but for your defensive front, are you seeing a lot of pressure from those guys on the quarterback this year?
Yeah, they're doing a really good job. We try to give those guys, D-line's actually what I've coached the most in my career, and so I'm kind of partial to those guys, and we try to give them a lot of tools to go play fast. I don't think, you go ask a guy to get to a fist fight, and you give him a bunch of addendums, he's probably not going to fight very, very well, right? And so I think if you can just let those guys play fast, they got a chance. So Coach Tesh and Coach Zachary do a great job with those guys, and I think they've had a good camp.
And y'all are obviously not practicing with Raheem Craig and J.D. Lampley, so 2 of your better pass rushers. How do you maybe account for that in the spring currently?
Yeah, I think it's just an opportunity for those guys to work on other things, right? Maybe the mental side of it, and develop some younger players. I think of Dylon, who just got here at mid-year. It's been invaluable, the reps he's gotten. When a freshman can come in at mid-year and get a lot of reps in spring, and they come in the fall and they've already gone to class, they've already practiced, they've already sat in the meeting rooms, right? Regardless if they actually carry the verbiage over from spring to fall, the routine of being a college athlete is something that's hard to get over as a freshman, right? The schedule and things like that. And those opportunities that he's gotten specifically in that room are invaluable. So those guys being out has even added more to his reps, right? The guy's getting a lot of reps at practice for a freshman.
How was Kendrick DeJour been? So y'all added him as a transfer from Sam Houston, even pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah. Kendrick rolls out of bed and he's a good pass rusher. You know what I mean? He's more of a slender guy that needs to develop in the run game and things like that. And he's shown today was actually probably his best day versus the run. He had a couple good plays versus the run. So just developing him as a full player, I've seen that. And then just learning just how we do things here and things like that. But I've been pleased with his progress.
Coach, you guys obviously you're practicing against a different style offense, a super up tempo. Just how comfortable do you think your guys are going to feel when they get to slow down a little bit?
Yeah, hopefully it helps us a lot, because it can be frustrating at times. But I'm glad it's our team and it's the offense we run. And there'll be plenty of teams in our league that do similar things, so it'll prepare us for them, as well as if we can execute our defense. We try not to just say, well, they're playing fast, so we're not going to do that. No, we try to do our defense, and if we can execute our defense for them moving with that tempo and that pace, then we should be able to execute that versus a team that doesn't play at that pace.
Kind of going off that, but it's kind of a unique deal. You will face probably Army or Navy every year here at DC. Army this year, so is that something you start installing in the summer or just early in the spring, or when you look at that?
I think it depends sometimes, like when you play them. I played at an option school, Harding University, won the national championship 2 years ago, actually. But I think it depends on when you play them, right? If you play them really early, then you probably would work on it in the spring. If you play them in the middle of the season, maybe not. You know what I mean? If you play them at the end of the year, it might be good to work on them during the bye week. You got to steal reps for sure. I'm sure we'll have something in the summer at some point. We'll do it, but I think that's a year-to-year deal. Based on when you play them during the season.